My beloved child. Don't move past this too quickly, because the confession your soulmate has been carrying is far more complicated than you imagined. For a long time, there was something they could never bring themselves to explain whenever the person you lost came up in conversation. Their expression changed. Their words became careful. Sometimes they avoided the subject completely. You may have assumed they simply didn't know how to comfort you, but there was another reason. They knew something. More importantly, they had been connected to a decision made before that painful loss entered your life. And now, after keeping that connection hidden, they have finally reached the point where silence feels heavier than the truth. But here is the strange part: their confession does not begin with what happened. It begins with one sentence they have rehearsed countless times: "There is something about your past that I should have told you sooner." Don't skip, because what comes after those words changes the meaning of everything they have been hiding. Your soulmate never expected the past to follow them into their connection with you. Long before they understood how important you would become, they crossed paths with someone connected to the person you loved. At the time, it seemed like an ordinary moment, an introduction, a conversation, a choice that appeared too small to matter. Only later did they realize that this moment became one piece in a much larger chain of events. That realization has stayed with them. Yet there is an important distinction they desperately want you to understand: being connected to what happened is not the same as intentionally causing it. They have been terrified that if they revealed their role too quickly, you would hear only the connection and never stay long enough to understand the full story. So they waited. They searched their memory. They questioned what they could have done differently. And every time they looked at you, one thought returned: if they discover this from someone else, I may never get the chance to explain. Stay till the end, because the secret becomes even more unexpected when you discover why they chose this moment to confess. Something changed recently. Your soulmate learned that another person remembers what happened, and that person knows about the connection they tried so hard to bury. Suddenly, keeping quiet was no longer protecting anyone. It was only delaying a conversation that had become unavoidable. So your soulmate made a decision: you deserve the complete truth, even if hearing it changes how you see them. But before speaking, they uncovered one detail they had never known before, and this detail completely shifted their understanding of the past. The choice they had blamed themselves for all this time may not have carried the meaning they believed it did. Someone else had information they never received. Someone else understood the situation differently. And now your soulmate realizes there is one missing conversation that could finally explain why everything unfolded the way it did. Something huge is waiting for you, because when they reveal who that other person is, and what was quietly kept from both of you, the darkest part of this secret may turn out to be something entirely different from what you expected. The truth became harder to ignore the moment your soulmate finally learned the identity of the person who had been holding that missing information. It wasn't a stranger. It was someone who had quietly witnessed pieces of the story from the beginning, someone who understood that your soulmate had spent years blaming themselves for something they never fully understood. And when they finally spoke, they revealed a detail your soulmate had never heard before. That small decision from the past had not created the outcome your soulmate feared it had. There were already circumstances unfolding beyond their knowledge and control. Imagine the emotion of realizing that the secret you carried for so long was built around only half the story. But your soulmate's relief lasted only seconds, because another question immediately appeared: if someone knew this all along, why had they remained silent? Don't skip. That answer is where this story takes an entirely unexpected turn. Your soulmate began asking questions they had been afraid to ask before. Dates were remembered. Conversations were revisited. Details that once seemed unrelated suddenly started connecting. And through all of it, one realization became impossible to avoid: the person you loved had apparently known about your soulmate before you ever understood how closely your paths would eventually cross. Not in some mysterious supernatural way, but through a real connection from the past that nobody had explained to you. Your soulmate was stunned. They had spent so much time wondering how they could possibly confess their involvement, yet now they were discovering that the story had another layer, one involving a conversation they were never supposed to hear about. Stay till the end, because this is where their fear begins turning into determination. They no longer want to hide behind silence. They want you to know exactly what happened, even if the truth forces both of you to reconsider everything you thought you knew. Then came the detail that stopped them completely. The person holding the missing information remembered something your loved one had said during one of those earlier conversations, and although the exact words had faded with time, the meaning remained unmistakable. Your loved one had apparently recognized something important about your soulmate's character and had made a choice not to judge them by one confusing moment. That realization shattered the story your soulmate had been telling themselves for years. They had expected the past to expose them as someone you could never look at the same way again. Instead, the past was revealing that their guilt had grown larger than their actual responsibility. But there is still one piece they haven't told you. Something huge is waiting for you, because hidden inside that old conversation was a final detail specifically connected to you, and when your soulmate discovered what it meant, they realized this confession was never only about their secret. It was about something your loved one had wanted you to understand. What your soulmate discovered next changed the entire weight of the confession. The final detail connected to you wasn't a dramatic prediction or some impossible coincidence. It was something deeply human. Your loved one had apparently understood that one day you might carry unanswered questions about the past, and they never wanted those questions to make you suspicious of everyone who entered your life afterward. Your soulmate heard this and went completely quiet. For years, they had imagined themselves standing before you with a secret powerful enough to destroy your trust. Now they were beginning to understand that the person you lost had seen the situation with more compassion than they had given themselves. But there was still something your soulmate couldn't explain. Why had your loved one chosen not to tell you about their connection while there was still time? That question became impossible to ignore. And the answer was hidden inside one decision nobody had mentioned until now. Your soulmate went back through everything they could remember, and suddenly one overlooked conversation became important. Before the loss that changed your world, there had been an opportunity for the truth to come forward. Your soulmate almost spoke then. They almost explained how they were connected, what they knew, and why one earlier choice had left them uncomfortable. But someone close to the situation asked them to wait. Not because the truth needed to remain hidden forever, but because important facts were still unclear. Your soulmate agreed, believing there would be another opportunity. There wasn't. That is the part they have struggled to forgive themselves for. Their deepest regret wasn't simply being connected to the past. It was believing they had more time to explain it. Don't skip, because this is where the confession becomes much more personal. Your soulmate isn't asking you to erase what happened. They're preparing to tell you exactly what they did, what they didn't do, and why the difference matters. And then they finally stopped protecting themselves from the possibility of your reaction. They decided that when they speak to you, they will not soften the truth or hide behind excuses. They will tell you that they were present during an important moment connected to the events surrounding your loss. They will explain the choice they made afterward and why they stayed silent when questions began appearing. But they will also reveal something they only recently discovered: another person made a separate decision after your soulmate walked away, and your soulmate knew nothing about it until now. That missing decision changes the timeline they had blamed themselves for all these years. Stay till the end, because your soulmate has finally found the courage to uncover who made that choice. And when they learned the reason behind it, they realized there was one final secret still buried in the past, a secret that may explain why your loved one never wanted you to blame your soulmate in the first place, but the final secret didn't arrive the way your soulmate expected. There was no dramatic confrontation, no perfect explanation waiting to erase every unanswered question. Instead, they discovered something quieter and far more emotional. The separate decision made after they walked away had been based on information they never possessed. That meant your soulmate had spent years judging their own actions without knowing what happened afterward. Suddenly, the timeline looked different. Their connection to your loss was real, and they would never pretend otherwise, but the responsibility they had placed entirely upon themselves was not supported by the complete story. And then came the detail that made them think immediately of you. Your loved one had apparently wanted certain misunderstandings cleared up rather than carried forward. Your soulmate realized that continuing to hide was doing exactly the opposite. Don't skip, because this is the moment they decided the confession could no longer wait. For the first time, your soulmate began preparing to tell you everything in the correct order. No missing pieces. No carefully chosen half-truths. They would explain how the original connection happened, why they remained silent, what they believed for years, and what they only recently discovered. But while putting those pieces together, they noticed something that unsettled them. One person's version of the story didn't match the timeline. A conversation supposedly happened after your soulmate left, yet one detail suggested that someone had known much earlier what was unfolding. Why would they pretend otherwise? Your soulmate started wondering whether the silence surrounding the past had protected someone else's reputation while leaving them carrying blame that never fully belonged to them. Stay till the end, because they are no longer searching for a way to escape responsibility. They are searching for accuracy, and that search has uncovered a name they never expected to see connected to the story. That name belongs to someone your soulmate once trusted completely. Someone who had encouraged them to stay quiet until everything became clearer. Now your soulmate understands why that advice may have been given, and the realization has changed their entire approach. They don't want to confront you with assumptions. They want to bring you what they actually know and separate it from everything they merely believed. Most importantly, they want you to understand one thing before hearing the final piece. Their silence came from fear and regret, not from a desire to manipulate your memories of someone you loved. Something huge is waiting for you, because your soulmate has now uncovered the reason that trusted person wanted the truth delayed. And buried inside that reason is one final revelation, something that explains not only why your soulmate remained silent, but why the person you lost may have understood far more about the situation than anyone realized. Now the reason for that silence is finally beginning to surface, and it is nothing like your soulmate imagined. The trusted person who asked them to wait had apparently been trying to prevent an incomplete story from reaching you before the facts were understood. Your soulmate had interpreted that request differently. They thought they were being told to bury their connection permanently, so they carried the secret forward, believing that speaking later would only reopen questions you had struggled to put down. But years of silence changed everything. What began as hesitation became regret, and regret became a private burden they could no longer separate from their feelings for you. Then they learned something surprising. Your loved one had been aware that confusion existed around this situation. They simply never wanted you receiving fragments without context. Don't skip, because that distinction becomes the key to everything your soulmate is about to confess. For the first time, your soulmate can finally separate what actually happened from what they feared had happened. Yes, they were connected to an important moment surrounding your loss. Yes, they made a choice they still wish they had handled differently. And yes, they remained silent much longer than they should have. But the evidence they uncovered suggests they were never secretly responsible for the entire chain of events they had imagined in their mind. That realization doesn't erase their regret. It changes what the regret means. They are no longer preparing to come forward and say, "Everything was because of me." Instead, they are preparing to say, "I was there. I knew part of the story. I should have told you sooner, and you deserve to hear exactly what I know." Stay till the end, because just when your soulmate thought they finally understood the complete picture, one forgotten detail surfaced from that trusted person's memory. It involved the last meaningful conversation they remembered having with your loved one about the situation. Your soulmate expected to hear anger, disappointment, or blame attached to their name. Instead, they learned that your loved one had apparently been more concerned about what unanswered questions might eventually do to you. That changed your soulmate completely. Suddenly, this confession stopped being about protecting themselves from your reaction. It became about giving you information that should never have remained hidden for so long. But there is still one question your soulmate cannot answer without speaking directly to you, because the final detail concerns something only you would recognize, a small memory, an ordinary moment, something that seemed meaningless at the time. Something huge is waiting for you, because when your soulmate reveals what that memory is, you may finally understand why your loved one chose to leave one particular truth unfinished.